Hey, this is Paul Blough. It's time for another 5x5, and today we're going to talk about how to keep your website safe, and particularly how you can keep it safe from ransomware. Now, you know ransomware. That's that thing that attacks your computer and takes your Microsoft Excel spreadsheets and your QuickBooks databases and your Word documents and your pictures and your videos and everything that means everything to you, and locks it up tight with encryption and then tries to sell you a ransom key back to unencrypt your own data. That's a scary, scary thing. It's a growing problem and certainly something that we're very, very aware of and very sensitive to. But instead of talking in general about that today, what I want to do is I want to point out a very new, very specific attack, and that is using this ransomware type attack against a website. So WordPress represents about 60% of all the websites that are out on the internet. That's pretty cool, which means that if you're using WordPress, which we use a lot of WordPress, you can do some pretty amazing things because there's lots of add-ons and utilities and lots of knowledge and know-how out there about WordPress. You can watch videos on it. You can get a lot of people who are trained on it to help you. And so it's an excellent platform for building your website on. But just like Microsoft Windows, who still is the dominant player when it comes to operating systems, if you're the big boy, if you're the guy that has the biggest percentage of the market, you're the biggest target. And so WordPress is a big target as well. And one of the targets now is a type of ransomware that attacks specifically WordPress. And it will take your website hostage, lock it up, and only give it back to you if you pay the ransom. Now that ransom can be $750. I've seen it be as high as $17,000. And unless you have a backup, once your site's been infected, there is no other way to get it back other than to pay that ransom. So let's talk a little bit about websites and the need to do backup. So you got your website hosted someplace else. You're not running it local. You're not running it on your own computer. You're not running it on a server there at your office. At least I hope you're not. You've got it up in a data center someplace, and so you probably in all good conscience are believing that that data center is doing everything that they're supposed to do to protect your website. You couldn't be more wrong. That is not their job. Their job is to provide you a service in which that website is allowed to be up and running on a server, and it's being provisioned and it's being shared out, and they're giving you some bandwidth and they're giving you some capabilities, and that's great and that's wonderful, but they're not system administrators. And a system administrator is the guy who's watching out over your technology to make sure that it's being handled correctly and that updates are being applied like they need to be, and virus protections installed and firewalls are in place, and all of the good stuff that's necessary to keep it safe is being done. Now, I've dealt with this an awful lot, and this is a very confusing topic because a lot of times people will say, well, Paul, it's in the cloud, and so the cloud is taking care of everything. I don't have to pay support charges any longer. I don't need anybody. That's not true. You probably need somebody even worse than you did when you had your services on site, because now you've got services in several different clouds. They're interacting, and nobody's really keeping them safe. We've seen Microsoft databases be that they're hosting be infected. We've seen it with Amazon. We've seen it with everybody. So there is no safe system out there, and you need to make sure that you're keeping your system safe. So I guess first piece of advice I've got to you: don't assume just because it's your website and it's hosted someplace that they're taking care of it. So after we've now taken personal responsibility back for our website, especially if we're doing any kind of e-commerce or we're all on a business level dependent upon that website, what do we need to do? Well, first of all, you need to be on a secure host. You need to be on somebody who does do some measure of security related to their WordPress hosting for you. So WordPress, just like every other program out there, has to be updated on a regular basis to remove vulnerabilities. And if you're not doing that, if you don't have a plan to do that, you probably are on an old version of WordPress. And even worse, maybe you have some additional add-ins and tools in there that are also not up to date. And so you've got vulnerability after vulnerability that the bad guys can come right in and exploit. And next thing you know, your website's got a big ransom on it, and you're having to pay this fee to be able to get out of it. So we got to keep it up to date. Do our patch management. We need to have antivirus on it, just like we would any place else. We need to do some other things to harden it out, and that's all great and wonderful, but as many good things as I throw at it to try to prevent the problems from happening, I can't give you a 100% guarantee, and no one else can either. It's not going to ever be impossible that you get hacked. So what do you do to make sure? Well, number one thing that you always do is you back it up. When's the last time you backed up your website? Never? That's what I would hear from most people. Most people don't think about backing up a website, but a website contains a lot of really important data, sometimes that's no place else. So make sure that there is a backup of that data, and that backup is kept someplace isolated from that computer, so that if that server in the data center where you've got your website gets attacked, you've got a backup that you can restore from. That's the key piece to this. And so this is a real threat, and it's something that I just have to try to get you to get excited about and get thinking about, because it's one of those things that it's out of sight, out of mind. I just made a website. I hired somebody to do a website. They're doing all this stuff. Well, look, if you're not paying them to manage it, you're not paying them to keep it secure, then they're not doing it for you. Nobody can afford to do this for free. It takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. And so you've got to ask yourself that question. Am I spending the time to keep this up and running? Am I spending the time to keep this safe? Even outside of the ransomware piece of it, a lot of times what will happen with a website is it'll become compromised with bad code. And so even if they don't deface your website and they don't hold it hostage, they may be injecting their own code, their own program into your own website. And every time your customers are visiting that, they're capturing information about those customers that they could use as an exploit or an attack against them, or even to just gain information about your customers if it's a competitor or somebody that's not very scrupulous. So lots of things to consider when it comes to websites. I would tell you that I'm not trying to scare you, but I'd be lying. I am trying to scare you. I want you to have a certain measure of fear. I don't want you to be paralyzed. I don't want you to go offline and say, I'm not going to have a website. I just want you to be mature and reasonable and safe and secure when it comes to using it. So make sure that you give security consideration. Hey, and if this is intimidating you, or you're not quite sure what to do next, or this is all over your head, just give us a call and we'll be glad to help you. I appreciate you listening, and I hope that you have a great day.